Reena, thank you so much for joining today. We are talking about the first content piece in the Design for Equity reading series, Advancing Racial Literacy in Tech. So thank you so much for joining today to share.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Okay, so just to start off, I would love if you could share a brief introduction and talk about your role and what you do and why the idea of designing for equity is important to you.
Okay, my name is Reena Gauv. I'm a digital product designer. I work on basically anything digital related to web, app, or a little bit of a graphic design as well. And you can find me at creativerebelry.com.
Okay, so let's jump into the content piece and talk about our reactions. So this was an amazing read. The whole sort of premise I felt of this article was to put forward the concept of racial literacy as being a key method to addressing some of the racially disparate impacts of technology that we are hearing and reading about in, artificial intelligence and social media technology. And the article really covers, the authors really talk about 3 different foundations for how to go about doing that. One is an intellectual understanding of how structural racism translates into technology. The second area is emotional intelligence about how to resolve racially stressful situations. And then the third area is a commitment to taking action. So I will ask you to start. What was your 1 or 2, big takeaways from this read?
I think my biggest takeaway is just that there's a sliding scale of where people are. And sometimes some of us may be in the camp of, well, you just don't see anything is wrong. You don't notice anything is wrong. And you're completely unaware that somebody might have taken offense to something, or even if it's not offensive, somebody might not have felt considered in a situation. They might have felt like not thought of. And the second thing that really stuck out to me is a lot of us are also in the space of, well, I don't want to rock the boat. I'd rather just step away. It's not my problem. I don't need to say anything here. It doesn't involve me. And I feel like a lot of us are in those 2 stages of the sliding scale, the denial and the wanting to stay out of it stage. And it's really tough to move into the other stages because it does require an act of bravery to step out of your comfort zone and actually say, hey, I don't think we are considering a certain group of people here. You haven't considered how this affects how somebody feels, or how we haven't considered the historical context in this arena, things like that. And the act of bravery it's tough, I think, for a lot of people.
I love that. And I agree with you. So, I think you're talking about the exact, same big takeaway that I had in this article. And they call it the 5 stages of how to develop emotional intelligence. So there's denial, absence, which, those are the 2 that you just covered. And then there's confessional, where you're starting to understand racism and you begin to feel compelled to share and educate people around you. There's comfortable, I am able to recognize structural racism.
Yes.
And then the last one is transformational. I am committed to work on stopping the harm of racism. And so I definitely agree that it requires a degree of courage and braveness, to move from one end of the spectrum to the other. And then the other thing I think is interesting about these 5 stages is it really is, a reflection of a mindset and a way of being, right? And so,
to be open-minded.
To be open-minded, exactly. And when we think about, some of the other mindsets that we bring to design every day, like, embracing ambiguity, or, taking an iterative approach to our work, these things are just ingrained, and
Yes.
no one really has to tell you to do these things over time. They just become a part of how you work. They become a part of your being, right?
Yeah.
And so I think this paper is kind of making the case that racial literacy is also, a way of being. It's a mindset over time that you learn to cultivate.
It is a mindset. Yes. It's also a part of acknowledging that, the bravery that's required, it doesn't have to be such a large step that you can't do it. It could be really simple, and it looks different for different people. For you, it might be as simple as just, for example, if you're talking to a team and you're designing something, if you notice that something is missing, it could be as simple as you just taking a moment and pausing in the meeting and saying, hey guys, I noticed we didn't consider this. And it doesn't have to be this loud shouting from the mountains kind of bravery. It doesn't have to be. It's different for everybody. But whatever works for you is still something. It's still something that pushes the needle towards achieving this racial literacy in tech, which is where you're trying to go, Tashira. And I understand that. And to talk more about your, you were talking about mindset. It's also about leaning on the mindset as, again, I'm a designer, so I'm thinking from that perspective. As a designer, you're always learning, you're always updating your skills because the industry is constantly changing. So you're always in a mindset of, always be learning, right? And so with that mindset, this is something to learn. It's not something that's inherent. You can learn. You can learn to be compassionate. You can educate yourself on things you might not have learned before. You could read some books, you could talk to some folks, and just it opens your mind to so many possibilities you hadn't even realized. And you might even get eyes open to things in your past that you might have never noticed before you learned more. So yeah.
I absolutely enjoyed that description. Thank you so much. And, my build on that would just be, as we think about how to apply this idea to the work that we do, is to have grace with yourself and to not expect that you need to have all of the answers. And just to your point, look for the moments, right, where it makes sense to bring attention to, the opportunity to be more inclusive, to bring an expert, into the conversation if that is required and you don't have the education, to ask for time to do additional research in order to understand a certain audience. I think that, that can help, your team and your own, practice evolve in a very fantastic way. So any final thoughts from you on how to apply either the idea of emotional intelligence or anything else, in this article?
I think for me, I think one of the things I do want to talk about is where you mentioned in the paper, the barriers to racial literacy in tech. And it's, I think one of the main barriers is time. I mean, it's very easy for teams or jobs or anything in business to be just flushed for time. And you may not be able to control the situation around you, but what you can control within your circle it's still making a difference. So if you are able to take a pause in your own work and think it through, and then have a conversation and think it through and talk to somebody about that, that is still effective. But I just want to encourage all of us to just do that if we can, because I think that would be something that pushes the needle towards everybody taking a step towards having a more holistic picture as they design stuff.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Reena. This has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. And
Thank you,
I
Tashira.
hope that others enjoy the conversation that we've had.